Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out on short notice. First, I want to thank and introduce everyone who's with me, and we'll make sure to give them a chance to speak. First, I want to thank Marvena from Rep. Tosato's office. Thanks for being here. We appreciate his continued support. Of course, my colleague, Senator Welch, Representative Williams, and Representative Ash. For decades, people in Western Massachusetts have watched as companies closed and jobs moved elsewhere. And families increasingly had to wonder whether they had to leave this community for their kids to have a better life and to get the same opportunities as people everywhere else seem to get. We watched year after year and decade after decade as this trend happened. And make no mistake, this didn't happen because of a natural disaster. It wasn't because of a natural event. It was man-made. It was purposeful decisions that were made time and time again that left places like Western Massachusetts out of the growth and the opportunity we saw all around us. And for decades, people have brought up and have asked for a link between Western Massachusetts and the red-hot economies all around us, just to our east and just to our south. And a lot of progress has been made in fits and starts over the years towards improving those links. We, of course, will have the north-south service along the Knowledge Corridor, which was worked on for decades by Congressman Olver and Congressman Neal, and, of course, the service in Connecticut that will be opening this spring. But one piece that had been missing and has been missing for all those years is a connection to our capital city, which also happens to be one of the hottest economies on earth. The city of Boston, 90 miles to our east. And we have asked, we have pleaded, we have repeatedly said over and over again that while transportation investments with the MBTA and in Boston are very important, and we've all stood up and we've taken those tough votes for our colleagues and our friends in the eastern part of the state, there needs to be equality and there needs to be consideration for the 4 counties of Western Massachusetts who have not kept up with the growth and the opportunity we've seen in eastern Massachusetts. And for 3 years, we've worked to try to get MassDOT to do a feasibility study of east-west rail between Springfield and Boston. And for 3 years, for a variety of reasons we don't need to belabor right now, it didn't happen. But we did have a breakthrough on Friday that I wanted to briefly talk about. On Friday, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation released a draft of its 2018 rail plan. Now that's a little wonky, that's a little technical, but basically what that is it's a blueprint of all of the rail assets outside the MBTA service area that the state wants to make a priority and that the state wants to see resources allotted to. This happens about every decade that the state does a rail plan like this. And this year, the 2018 draft plan, which was posted online on Friday afternoon, includes discussion of a feasibility study between Springfield and Boston. It includes discussion of a study of connecting eastern Massachusetts with western Massachusetts. This is a major, major breakthrough. Now, this is a draft of the report. There was an open comment period until February 19th where people, the public, can participate in the editing and the revisions of this report. And I'm calling on the sons and daughters of Western Massachusetts, the families who care about this rail link, to do what you already have done, to continue to do that, to make your voice heard, to step up and to participate in this process so that the Mass Department of Transportation knows how important this link is for our future. There will be a hearing that MassDOT is hosting tonight in Worcester. We can get the details, the exact location to everyone. My colleague, Senator Goby, who's been a tireless champion of this project, will be there representing the Worcester delegation, and I'm sure many others will be there as well to make sure our voice is heard. And I would just conclude by saying this. This is not the end. We're not even close to the end. This is an announcement of an intention to study something that frankly should have been studied a long time ago, but that we know is so important. This is a big deal, it's a big breakthrough, and it gets us much closer to getting that study done. And I'm hopeful and I'm confident that at the conclusion of that comment period and at the conclusion of that draft rail report, we will get a real, true feasibility study of East-West Rail between Springfield and Boston from the Mass Department of Transportation, and that study will give us a blueprint and a movement going forward for how to make the most of that for our communities. So with that, I'll let my colleagues speak of Senator Welch.
Senator. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here with all my colleagues and with Senator Lesser, who has worked so hard to really bring this conversation to the forefront. And we'll continue to do that as a delegation as we look at priorities that are statewide. Oftentimes, as a Western Mass legislator, you're presented with priorities that aren't necessarily your priorities, aren't necessarily things that affect your district. And an effective transportation system is something that the people in the Boston area are constantly crying out for. And with that discussion comes this discussion. When we talk about a comprehensive, reliable transportation plan, that means for the entire state. That doesn't necessarily just mean for the Boston area and the towns in or around Boston. And this conversation that we're having today, and again, credit goes to Senator Lesser and all of the colleagues in Western Massachusetts who have pushed this discussion for so many years. And we have to continue to further that discussion and make sure that our transportation needs are heard just as loud as those people and those residents in Boston who demand a safe, effective transportation system. We demand a safe, effective transportation system here in Western Massachusetts as well, and that includes East-West Rail. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Maybe next time we can do this inside on a warm train. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you, Senator Lesser, for all your hard work. For everybody who's grown up in Western Mass or the Pioneer Valley knows that this isn't a new concept. This isn't a new idea. This is something that's been talked about for years. But for one reason or another, nothing's happened with it. So I want to commend Senator Lesser for getting this going again a couple years ago. And last year he hit a little speed bump on the road. But today, as the senator mentioned, this is a great day. This is a great announcement that we do have the feasibility study, or potentially a feasibility study, to make the interconnectivity from Western Mass to Boston a reality, hopefully, that we can see in our lifetime. I used to think that this is just a pie-in-the-sky dream. That's something I'd never see in my lifetime. But again, with the senator's perseverance and the Western Mass delegation, we've come a long way. And this is just the start of this. There's a lot of work to do. Obviously, getting the feasibility study going and then seeing where that goes from there. But to get Western Mass back on the map, obviously Springfield is moving forward. We got a beautiful Union Station here, and this is a great day. So I'm very proud. I'm very proud of my colleagues here, and especially Senator Lesser. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Senator Lesser for his tireless advocacy for Western Massachusetts and Springfield and the rail. And I want to thank the media for seeing how important this issue is, and you've also kept this in the forefront, which is very, very important. This might not seem like a big step, but in any journey, the first step is the most important step. That feasibility study is very, very, very important. It reminds me of the tale of two cities. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. You go to Boston, we go there almost on a daily basis, it's the best of times. We come back home, I'm not gonna say it's the worst of times, but we have a lot of work to do. And part of the catching up is connecting Boston, which has probably one of the most thriving economic situations in the whole wide world. We need to be connected to those jobs, because let me tell you, your tax dollar goes to Boston like everybody else's tax dollars. And we just want a return on our money. So Senator Lesser, thank you. Thank the media again, thank the delegation for keeping this going. And I know sometimes you felt like you've been in that storm and you've been battered and tossed and turned on a ship that's just moving. But you stayed steadfast. You didn't give up, but you haven't quit. So this is the first step. Let's move forward. Let's do that commentary period. Very, very important. We need, the state and the governor needs to hear from Western Massachusetts so we can make sure this issue stays on the front burner. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Senator, for having me here on behalf of State Representative Jose Tosado. And certainly, this is a day to hear of great news. I commend you for all your hard work and the Western Mass delegation of getting the feasible study. And as the colleagues have spoken and you have spoken, you have listened to the Western Mass constituents. Certainly, this is something that we deserve just as well as the eastern part of the state. This will allow us to have affordability and high-paying jobs and have great transportation during the struggles that as well as other cities do. But the transportation would be a plus. And you mentioned that this is a start process. And because of your hard work and the delegation, it is a starting process. But today is the beginning of a great day. And as you move forward from today, I look forward to hearing additional updates. And I'm one who speaks in existence. So on today, I'm going to claim this good news that you shared with us to come into fruition. So the next time that we gather, hopefully we could be talking about the next step and granting the transportation from the eastern part to the Western Mass. Thank you.
Thank you. So happy to take questions if there are questions. Well, I'll let the commentary be left to you, Dan. But I mean, this hasn't happened for 3 years, and now there's an announcement that they want to move forward with something that very closely mirrors what our original legislation called for. And it raises an important point, which is I really do want to thank quite literally thousands of people who participated in this process, who signed petitions, who came to hearings, who called legislators, who called leaders, who called the governor, who organized, who participated in rallies across the state, 5 locations across the state. We had a young woman from Palmer who presented a petition at one of our hearings at the Transportation Committee with quite literally thousands of signatures of her friends and her colleagues, other young people from Western Mass who believed in this. So I hope that it's an appreciation for how important this project is for us, and I also hope it's an appreciation for the predicament we are in Western Mass, which is we cannot continue on the trajectory that we're on, which is Eastern Mass continuing to see unprecedented economic growth and more of the jobs and the economic opportunity being vacuumed out of communities like Western Mass. That is not a sustainable situation, and it's going to require some big proactive steps to change it. So the plan is concrete. You can go online and read it on the MassDOT website. It was put out on Friday. There's going to be a hearing, a public hearing to discuss the report in Worcester today. It is government. There's a notice and a hearing and a comment process. The way this will work and the way it's been described to me by MassDOT is that they've issued the draft report. It's a big deal that there's a commitment to study East-West Rail in that report. There's now a multi-week process of public engagement, which is why we need the public. This is an appeal to the public to participate in this plan and to let your voice be heard and to make sure those comments and that those opinions are sent in. And then the hope is that the rail plan, yes, is a blueprint for where they want to put their resources. But there was a commitment made to me that there will be a study of East-West Rail and that the state will be undertaking that. And that's a big news. But again, it hasn't happened yet. I'm the first to say that it hasn't happened yet. So this is an appeal to the public to say, okay, you know, the curtain has been drawn, so to speak, and there's been an announcement that they want to get this started. And now it's on all of us to step up and mobilize and make sure it happens. Secretary Pollack told me, yes, that she wanted to study East-West Rail. It's reflected in the report that was put out on Friday. It will be reiterated, my hope is, again tonight in Worcester. It's been reflected to the delegation. And by the way, my bill is still pending in the legislature, so that's there as a backup as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point and a good question. So the way that the tiering works is the tier 1 projects are really shovel-ready projects, and no one is pretending that this is a shovel-ready project. There's a lot that has to be done. So we need to get a little bit more detail about what exactly tier 2 means. As it's been presented to me and as I've interpreted it and talking with folks at MassDOT, tier 2 is interpreted as projects that need to be studied. And that's always been what our position has been on this project. The bill I have is not a bill to build the rail, it's a bill to study the rail. No one is making illusions about how long it'll take and how substantial of an undertaking it will be. And so the tier 2 is meant to be projects that need to be studied, whereas tier 1 is things already happening.
Do you expect more attention from the Millennial Caucus on this? I know it's everyone's, it's up to everyone. Do you expect more laser-like attention from them?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, young people don't want to use cars, and we're less car dependent. We want to live in cities. We want to live in urban centers. We want to be able to use public transportation. We've seen that transformation in the Boston area already. We're hoping to pull that transformation west.
Gen
Thank you.
Xers are gonna